MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 1. 3/4 of the babies in the world learn more than one language. 4.3. Some learn 4 or 5 at the same time. That amazes people who are used to living in a community where only one language is spoken, but it's all perfectly normal. We have to think of it from the baby's point of view. All they know is that people are talking to them. They have no idea that the words belong to different languages. They won't realize that until they're older. If mummy speaks one way and daddy speaks another and the lady in the shop speaks in a third way, so what? They're only words, after all. Babies pick it all up naturally, like breathing. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 2. There is an old Chinese proverb which says, "To teach is to learn twice." It is well known that various types of teaching have various levels of effectiveness from passively listening to actively doing. But the most effective way to learn is to teach someone else what you know. If you can set up in your classroom frequent opportunities for the students to teach each other, then it accelerates what they learn. By making the nature of the work interesting and dynamic, it automatically improves behavior management. By giving students teaching opportunities, it helps them to usefully channel their excess energy, and it also helps with confidence building. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 3. Since hair had spiritual connotations in many ancient cultures, people who worked with hair were trusted and important members of their communities. In Africa, where a person's spirit was believed to reside in his or her hair, hairdressers were held in high esteem. People with a talent for hairdressing were encouraged to develop their skills so that they could serve others this way. Hairdressers developed close relationships with people as they spent hours washing, combing, oiling, styling, and ornamenting their hair. Male hairdressers served men, while women worked only with women. Before a master hairdresser died, he or she would give his or her combs and other tools to a chosen successor during a special ceremony. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 4. Pocahontas was actually a nickname, one of 4 names that the famous Indian girl had throughout her life. Pocahontas. Although known today as Pocahontas, meaning mischievous one, her given name was Amonut. Pocahontas, Amonut. Yet she also kept the secret spiritual name Matoka, and when baptized and married she took the name Rebecca. Matoka, Rebecca. She was never able to tell her own story, but Pocahontas's legend endures 400 years later and grows stronger with each new generation. Pocahontas 400. As an 11 or 12-year-old girl in the early 1600s, and one of the many children of the ruling chief Powhatan of present-day Virginia, Pocahontas lived during a time of great change for her people, a time of war and struggle with the English colonists of the Jamestown settlement. 1600-1112, Virginia Powhatan Pocahontas, Jamestown. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 5. Howard Zinn noted that historians are far from objective when they write about historical events. Howard Zinn. Presented with an infinite amount of information, historians choose what to report, emphasize, and interpret about the past. The information historians leave out of books may be just as important as what they include. In fact, the choice to exclude information may create stereotypes, myths, and cultural biases, or strengthen stereotypes that are already common. Historians often emphasize historical information that supports their own values and beliefs, or that supports the beliefs that are dominant in their societies. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 6. Painting, architecture, and sculpture often dominate our sense of the Renaissance. Yet this cultural movement became visible to many through a new world of fashion fueled by a passion for innovative ideas in dialogue with classical traditions. In daily life, dress possessed immediate visual appeal and increasingly offered choice. Clothes were immensely colorful, which made them attractive to look at. New materials, cutting, and sewing techniques transformed tailoring. Clever merchants created wider markets for innovations and chic accessories. Art depicted humans on an unprecedented scale, paying tribute to real-world experiences. Mirrors led more people to try to imagine what they looked like. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 7. No matter how it is presented, designed, and implemented, technology does play an ever-increasing and necessary role in higher education. Nevertheless, every university teacher faces at least 4 common areas of academic concern: preparing and organizing courses, teaching and providing assignments, assessing student learning, and evaluating the effectiveness of teaching. In the present day, in all areas of the curriculum, teachers must teach an information-based inquiry process to meet the demands of the technology age. Meeting this challenge will be impossible unless educators are willing to join the revolution and embrace the new technology tools available. Higher education in general and faculty members in particular must be the leaders in the integration of technology in diverse learning environments. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 8. In the middle of the 17th century, Holland, with the most powerful fleet in the world, was able to fully develop a colonial system and reach the pinnacle of her might. 17. Soon her main rival, the rapidly developing England, possessed economic superiority over Holland. The struggle between these countries reached its climax in the wars known as the Anglo-Dutch Wars. The arena of the main engagements was the North Sea. After several sea battles won by the English, Holland was forced to concede defeat. She then became a second-rate colonial power. 2. In fact, her fate was sealed by the victory of the industrial capital of England over the commercial capital of Holland, the military expression of which was the superiority of the English fleet. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 9. When children get upset, they cannot be reached by reasoning. When angry, they respond only to emotional bomb. 2 young siblings were playing in the basement. Suddenly a noise of destruction, followed by shouting and accusation, was heard. Red with anger, Billy, age 6, ran up the stairs and exclaimed, "Betsy knocked over my fort." 6 Billy Betsy. His mother sympathized, "Oh, that must have made you very angry." It sure did. He turned around and went back to play. This was the first time Billy's mother managed not to get involved in her children's daily quarrels. Billy. By not asking the fatal question who started it, she avoided her son's usual recital of grievances and requests for revenge. By mirroring his inner mood, she avoided the disagreeable role of becoming judge, prosecutor, and law enforcer to her children. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 10. The importance of Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492 cannot be exaggerated. 1492 Christopher Columbus. It established a permanent link between two entire ecosystems that had evolved in isolation from each another for almost 10,000 years. 10,000. The initial impact on the inhabitants of the Americas was catastrophic. Eurasian diseases and the infamous brutality of the Spanish conquistadors slaughtered the population. A remarkably small number of European invaders conquered the most sophisticated American states with startling ease, laying potentially the entire New World open to European exploitation and colonization. However, the arrival of European sailors in Asia did not have the same dramatic impact. Powerful countries, including India, Imperial China, the Mughal Empire, and the Japanese shogunate at first merely tolerated the Europeans as traders, allowing them to control only a few islands or enclaves along the coast, as long as they did not interfere or become too troublesome. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 11. Think of how you hold a pencil. Maybe your teacher was very strict with all her students, and you could only hold the pencil one way or you'd get in trouble. That pencil holding technique was likely ingrained, and you'd find it uncomfortable to hold a pencil any other way. Or maybe you like skiing and decide to take some lessons despite having skied already for a number of years. You may be surprised to discover that your posture and form aren't good. Your instructor will have to work harder to get you to change your form than if she was teaching a person who never skied before. That's because your muscles have learned a certain way of skiing that you now have to unlearn in order to pick up the correct form. So the next time you're learning something new, make sure you do it the correct way the first time around. That way you don't have to learn it twice. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. EBS Reading Power, 2020, Chapter 4 History and Education Exercise 12. Rites of passage are not a rational activity. They are designed to bring physical and emotional energy to a climax, bonding a group. They produce an experience, not an aha. Corporations have produced ropes course events to provide a physical challenge. Some groups have also included an emotional challenge of revealing deep fears and significant life-changing events. The key here is that all candidates are on trial and are made to believe their ordeal together is really tough. Whatever the ordeal, it should make good storytelling material. The physical events produce courage as a byproduct and an abiding sense that as a team anything can be accomplished. The emotional events remind participants of affection, honesty, and the feeling of belonging to a family. The combined result can be an organization unafraid to face new challenges together and able to communicate honestly about things that are not working. MTC. Good job.